Hi everyone and welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm Giulia Armellini from Consulenti, the first and largest fee-only financial planning firm in Italy. I'm here today with Jim Ludwick, a fee-only financial planner from the US. Jim, you're the founder of Main Street Financial Planning, the largest hourly and project fee-only firm in the US. Can you explain to us what fee-only financial planning is?
Certainly. Fee-only financial planning is a label that started in the early 1980s when a group of financial planners got together and said, we have to differentiate us from the typical person that does sales and earns a commission. And even when it came to managing their money, they would not only charge a percentage fee, but they would also sell them products. And so they came up with this fee-only label. And then soon thereafter, the big brokerage houses decided that, this was a threat to their superiority. And so they started using another label called fee-based. And it was to confuse the public because they used the word fee. And so fee only meant that only the client will pay us for our services, whether it's managing the money or doing financial planning and answering their questions. And so that's how that title came about. But because the big brokerage houses and banks have a lot more money for marketing, they introduced that fee-based, and it took about 20 years for the press, the journalism community, to start differentiating between the two. But for a long while, up until the early 2000s, there was confusion with the public here in the US, the difference between fee-only and fee-based. So you will still see it in a lot of areas where financial advisors that earn commissions say, well, I'm fee-based, to confuse the public. Does that answer your question?
Sure, we have the same issue in Italy because fee-based advisors, sometimes they call themselves independent advisors. So I definitely agree with you. Fee-only financial planners can be paid in different ways. Why did you choose an hourly fee?
Well, I came across a lady named Cheryl Garrett who was putting together a group of people, and she promised that she could teach you how to give advice by the hour. And that was easy to understand because many attorneys and accountants use the same kind of model. They charge by the hour. Most, in my experience here in the United States, most attorneys and accountants that charge by the hour do it in 6-minute increments. So I have no long conversations with my attorney on how was your vacation. Usually it's one word, fine, because I know the clock is ticking. The hourly model, though, that I adopted, that I was taught by Cheryl Garrett, was to look at the work involved and give them a bid like a contractor. So if you have a contractor to remodel your house, they come in, they look at what the work needs to be done, what materials they have to buy, how many hours of work, and then they give you a bid. It's the same way with the hourly fee-only financial planning practice. And in the early days, I had a spreadsheet where I added up all the hours of work and any other kind of time that I had to spend like in meetings, and gave them like a contractor's bid. Later on, when I became more comfortable, I could just explain it verbally and say, it's about 6 hours to do this and about 3 hours of meetings. That's 9 hours times $400. That'll be $3,600. And I put in a 1 hour fudge factor. So the bid would be $3,600 to $4,000. And I didn't need a spreadsheet. Sometimes the spreadsheet was a little intimidating to people. And I found that later on the verbal bid was just as effective, if not better.
Based on your experience, what are the best strategies to find new clients?
Well, in my case, I joined a group of financial advisors in near the DC, the U.S. Head of the location of the government, and it was headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland, which is about 35 miles north of DC. And they met once a month to talk about their problems and concerns. And I was offered the opportunity to be in charge of the group. And most of these fee-only advisors managed money. In our model was not to manage money, and they didn't know anybody who did work on an hourly basis. So there was about 40 of them or so, and over 2 years that I headed the group, I got to know everybody, and then I became top of mind when they had a client who was too small, who was too different, who didn't want their money managed, they just wanted their questions answered, and I got a lot of referrals from that. Secondly, I had a communications coach who said, become a friend of journalists. So I would comment by email on stories that financial journalists wrote. I would tell them it was a great story, and if you do it again, here's a couple of more questions or issues you might deal with in a follow-on. And then every October, I would send about 20 journalists story ideas for the new year, because towards the end of the year, they're writing stories to be in the press for the new year. Get a new start, whether, it's similar to you're going to go on your diet after the first of the year and do other things, starting with other goals. So the financial journalists wanted to come up with new ideas. And of those, say 20 journalists, I sent them all different ideas. I didn't send them all the same idea because I didn't want to think it was just a group email sent to them individually. So I tried to personalize it, and I frequently was quoted in the press because of that. Number one, I was a helpful person, and number two, I wasn't selling anything. I was just being helpful to the common person, which is one of the reasons I named my company Main Street, because I just wanted to be on the Corso Cavour, just on the main street of town, and that's where everybody walks by, and I wanted to be able to help them. Okay?
Yeah. And did you find any difficulties in explaining to your potential clients what you do and how you differ from bank advisors?
Yes. There was consistent confusion. And so when I started off, my domain was mainstreetplanning.com, and I was Jim at mainstreetplanning.com. But every time I wrote somebody, they were still confused about our business model. So I changed my email address. I started using an alias that would forward to my regular account. And I was Jim at adviceonly.net. Adviceonly.com was not available. Somebody wanted to sell it to me for $25,000, and I said, no, thank you. So I was Jim at adviceonly.net because I had to keep reinforcing that I only gave advice. And it took, like I say, with the help of journalists, maybe 10 years before the confusion level was a minority situation and not a majority situation.
We can say that fee-only financial planners are problem solvers. What are the main reasons why people contact you?
Usually, it's two things. Usually there's some crisis that they have to solve an issue. It could be their company is offering them a pension or a lump sum of money, and they need to make a decision. And they usually wait till the last minute and then they contact us. That's one thing. Number two, maybe they've helped their parents over the years and saw their parents didn't have a good idea of what to do. And so they got to this model where I don't want to end up like this, so maybe I better do some planning ahead of time so I don't end up in the same situation. So I think, and maybe the third one was they saw their peers doing something and they went in and decided, well, I would like to do the same thing. I would like to be just as on the ball as my colleague at work or my neighbor, etc.
Most people in Italy still rely on commission-based advisors that are paid for the investments they sell. Finally, in 2018, the National Register of Independent Financial Advisors was born. What are your top tips for advisors for going independent?
Well, and this is in two other businesses I started in my career, that it was, I think, and I've seen other people start businesses too, whether it's in financial services or in other industries, it tends to be a 3-year ramp up. And that was my experience, and it's been the experience of other financial advisors. The first year, you're spending money and your time trying to find clients or referrals to clients. The second year, you earn enough to pay yourself back for the money you spent the first year. And then the third year, you can start to make a profit. And so it was that kind of situation that I observed over and over again. And this group that I belong to, called the Garrett Planning Network, in the early years at the annual meeting, I participated on a panel to tell them how my business was going. I felt very open, as I do now, about talking about the business and how much you can make and how you make it and how you should, spend your money on various services to support a business. And so the way that people can be successful in this business, in my opinion, is really work hard and not spend money foolishly like I did. So I was always on this panel, and I started off by saying, 20 some years ago, the telephone book had the people's names and address and numbers in the front page, and it was white paper. And then they had the advertisements in the back of the telephone book, and it was in yellow paper. And so I bought advertisements in the yellow pages to only find out that no one looks for a financial advisor, fee only, hourly, or otherwise, in the yellow pages. But then I was located in a town with a big military base, and I was retired military, and it had a lot of civilians too. And so I advertised in the base newspaper. I found out that people don't select their financial advisor by seeing an advertisement in a newspaper. So I found out early on what didn't work. And my problem was I didn't listen close enough to my communications coach that I mentioned earlier, who said, become a friend of journalists and become a friend of other advisors, because if you have a niche, a specialty, then they'll think of you. So one of my specialties was owning rental property. My father was in real estate, my brother's in real estate. I own another company with my brother in commercial real estate. And therefore people, when they said, gee, this person has a lot of rental properties, I'm not comfortable doing that, they would send the person to me. Also, they knew I had a lot of experience in insurance because I had been a life insurance agent. So they knew my specialties were rental properties and life insurance. So I got a lot of referrals that way because people knew my expertise, and I was always quick to point it out. I wrote articles about it as a way to differentiate myself.
Thank you, Jim. I'm sure that your story will inspire others to pursue the same career.
Well, I'm happy to do that. This is a wonderful career because number one, people really appreciate you helping them, and it makes you feel good. And one of the wonderful things that happen is people retire earlier than what they originally thought because they develop a financial plan and they got excited along the way and they worked even harder to have the savings and have their mortgage paid off and the lifestyle they wanted. And that makes you feel really good. And when people say, you changed my life, it makes my heart feel wonderful. So that's the best non-cash benefit of this business, is people really appreciate you.
Thank you.